Welcome to Lesson 2. In this lesson, we will explore the methodology behind design excellence. The principles of what we call Design for Six Sigma will be the anchor of our design excellence approach. Within Design for Six Sigma, we will talk about the methodology called DMADV. DMADV will be the process by which we will pursue the translation of the design to the actual product. In Lesson 2, we will discuss the concept of the Design for Six Sigma, what it is, why we're doing it. We'll also cover the DMADV process and its principles, and we'll go over each of the steps in the DMADV. Design for Six Sigma is an evolved version of the Six Sigma methodology that you may be familiar with. It focuses on addressing what we call upstream issues such as design defects or quality that can actually be addressed at the design level. Design for Six Sigma is a methodology that we use when small process improvements or iterations of improvements are no longer achievable. It is now important for us to be able to look at how we may redesign not only our products but also our processes and even the way we deliver our services. It does make use of some of the Six Sigma tools that you may be familiar with. It goes through the process of identifying the opportunity, defining what the focus of your project will be. We measure the impact that we wanted to achieve, analyze the design parameters, design it, and then later on verify, validate, and then transfer for our production. So why do we need Design for Six Sigma? We all know that consumers change over time. The landscape changes over time. What used to be acceptable is no longer acceptable. Higher and higher standards are needed for us to be able to satisfy our customers. In this situation, it is not just a matter of improving the way we do things, but rather improving in terms of leaping towards the next level. This means that we need to consider evaluating new designs or redesigning our process so that we can build in a defect-free product and process. It requires an overhaul of an existing product or process so that they become robust enough to be insensitive or not sensitive to changes that can happen during and beyond manufacturing. Design Six Sigma is an upstream way of addressing problems before they even happen. By using the Design for Six Sigma perspective, we are going to apply tools and techniques in a systematic way in order for us to be able to design, develop products and processes that meet both the external and internal requirements of our customers consistently. Consistently implies that we are able to come up with the same results every time, regardless of who does what. In order for us to be able to apply the Design for Six Sigma perspective, we follow what we call a DEMAD-V approach. The DEMAD-V is the step-by-step approach of executing and embracing or practicing the design for Six Sigma. In order to remain true and consistent to how we would apply DEMAD-V, we need to follow some basic principles behind it. Number one, we have to ensure that customer requirements are clear and that they should be achieved during our design process so that we get to reduce not only the product but also the process variability or inconsistency that might be born out of the design that we chose. We need to design the process at the same time you design the product. You need to be able to make sure that both the product design and the process that requires to make the design makes sense, not only for the customer, but more also for the business. We need to understand that we are capable of producing and delivering the design as expected, consistently. This means that we have to be clear of what our current capability is or what capability is needed to make that happen. And finally, following the DEMAD-V promotes a collaborative work early in the design process where we expect collaboration work not only among the R&D personnel, but more importantly with supply chain, with logistics, with manufacturing, and even quality. When we talk about DEMAD-V or DFSS, or what we call Design for Six Sigma, it is a focused perspective of redesign or a design challenge more than an improvement challenge. Six Sigma or DEMAKE remains to be an approach that tends to focus on improving something that's existing, and you try to find out how to fix what is existing. It also addresses only a few of what we call critical performances. When you are faced with a situation where the current state is no longer capable of delivering what you need, or the standard that's needed to satisfy is too high, that the current process or way of doing things can no longer be done, then you need to consider a redesign. In a redesign challenge, you are now faced with multiple critical to quality measures that may even be conflicting. And this poses a challenge to look at the design from the whole rather than from individual parts. So when do we do a DEMAD-V? Two conditions. Number one, we don't have the product or the process that we need. There's a need to introduce new products or a new version of something else that's not capable of delivering what is needed. Second, incremental improvement is no longer producing the result you wanted. One concept with the incremental improvement is the concept of marginal return. As you keep on driving and driving the improvements, the degree by which improvement happens decreases over time. And therefore, it's important for you to step back and think about having a new process rather than iterating on an existing one. This applies to both products and services as well. Some people often ask the question like, how do you know when you will do a DEMAD-V and how do you do a DEMAKE? DEMAKE is the process improvement perspective where you go through define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. While DEMAD-V goes through the process of defining, measuring, analyzing, designing, and then validating. Technically, when you talk about DEMAD-V, it goes through the process of, is the process currently capable or is the product currently available of addressing the needs? Then you go through a redesign challenge of evaluating a new concept, looking at the feasibility, developing it, launching it, and then eventually measuring the success of that new product. So there's a degree by which you might want to pursue a demake, but when the process can no longer produce or the product produce, then you have to change to the DEx or to the DFSS approach. So the DFSS follows now a 5-step approach called define, measure, analyze, design, and then verify and validate. And the idea of the DEMAD-V follows what we call a cycle path process, where eventually once you have developed and designed or produced a new product or process, you may have to iterate and evolve it to the new version, and so on and so forth. Each step in the DEMAD-V has a purpose. Define talks about developing a good business case, scoping and making sure that you are clear, the project development team is clear on what the intention is for their design challenge. Second, we measure by gathering the needed inputs from the customers, from the business, from the supply, from the materials, and any other design inputs that we need to satisfy in order to be able to come up with the right product. Analyze means coming up with the right concept and be able to ensure that that concept would be the viable concept to be developed into a detailed design. The design phase or the design step talks about developing the details of the concept. And this is where you have to check not only in terms of the detailed components of the product, but also how these product components will be produced. And finally, verify and validate wants to be able to confirm that whatever we have designed meets the requirements that we have and conforms to the needed specifications that we got from our users. The DEMAD-V step is not a linear process where you simply follow them step by step, although they're meant to guide us systematically. In practice, it is often expected that you take a few steps forward and a few steps back upon being able to discover certain things as you make sure that you design your products and your services in a way by which you're able to minimize or avoid the possibility of not meeting the requirements. The key learnings in Lesson 2 are as follows. Number 1, a new design or a redesign of the process is necessary to consider how we can build a defect-free product and process. By overhauling an existing product or process, we are aiming to come up with a better process that is robust enough to be able to withstand any sensitivities or changes so that variation is minimized. And finally, applying the design for Six Sigma approach means that we're actually addressing upstream issues and not improving what we have.